Are Manchester United in crisis? Surely not. But then headlines throughout the day, throughout the past couple of days, have actually said that Erik ten Hag does not necessarily have the relationship with the players that some people would prefer. Welcome back to the Laurence McKenna channel. It's good to have you guys. Let's break down what's actually going on at Manchester United, what the media wants you to believe, what you want to believe, and why the truth is probably somewhere in between. Erik ten Hag, this guy right here, probably one of the most promising, I want to say young managers in Europe, but one of the most promising managers in Europe, and someone who's got a very good career behind him, but also has a very high upside if you can stick to that managerial plan, should we say. Seems to have a bit of a problem now at Manchester United. And I'm going to go why. I kind of go straight into why, right? Mystery, Man United player, leaks to friends that they are not having Erik ten Hag as manager and are disgusted by his treatment of Cristiano Ronaldo, Jadon Sancho, and therefore also Harry Maguire. This was then also leaked on TalkSport. Weirdly, worrying Man United rumour emerges from disgusted, they keep using the word disgusted, dressing room amid Jadon Sancho spat. We scroll over a little further. Manchester United fans asking, are we the crisis? Manchester United fans particularly? No. But are we in crisis? Almost constantly. And that is part of the issue with modern media, right? As you're going into an international break, what do you need? Clicks. Not as many people click on club things during the international break. Not as many people are interested in overall football stories. And not as many people click on the international stuff that happens. Is anyone really clicking on Harry Kane's article about how players get better after the age of 30? Do I disagree? No. Do I get a weird feeling from the whole Erik ten Hag thing? Yes. Why? Because I'm kind of getting shades of Andre Villas-Boas. Now, weirdly, I get these shades fairly regularly when it comes to what's going on at Manchester United recently. Andre Villas-Boas was a very promising manager. He was looking to follow in a number of famous Portuguese managers' footsteps, particularly Jose Mourinho. And so he was brought in at Chelsea to kind of clear house, make a whole new generation of players, and make the club into the next version of whatever Roman Abramovich at the time wanted it to be. Andre Villas-Boas, of course, instantly came up against extreme resistance within the squad. Moving on from a team of huge wage players and high-profile individuals who had culture laid down at the club already, who had roots in that area, who had their kids in school, who were very happy living in London, who were very happy with Chelsea paying a fat wage, who were very happy with all the benefits, did not want to lose that. And they saw the club as theirs because Mourinho had created this siege mentality, created a mentality which felt inherently Chelsea, but also felt like it inherently belonged to the players. It was something that you couldn't really weed out because the players who were there had gone through a formative time, which was so important under Jose Mourinho. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that has happened under another manager, but what has over time germinated at Manchester United has been this weird mentality of Manchester United almost feels there to be exploited by some of these top players. It feels as if because it feels so rudderless overall, when it actually isn't rudderless, Manchester United has an exploitation culture at the very top level. There are players who, in retrospect, saw themselves as bigger than the club. Partially, possibly, Cristiano Ronaldo, someone who is particularly well-liked in the footballing community because A, he is somewhat of a deity, B, he's also someone who a lot of other players look up to and say, I could be like that guy, how do I operate like that guy? Similar to Michael Jordan vibes in the NBA, similar to Tom Brady over in NFL, similar to any other huge entity where that guy has done something that is prolific and different and exciting. Other players look at that and go, why can't I be that guy? Similarly, that's probably why someone like Jadon Sancho went to this club. He thought he could put his mark on that place. Every football player has an ego. Every football player wants to be, well, you don't necessarily have to be the main man, but be the football player at that club. And that's what's impacting Manchester United right now. There are so many different should we say, incentives that are being laid down at Manchester United, but in different directions. The incentive for Erik ten Hag is obviously to lead the club in one direction, but it would also benefit him at that point. It's to do it in a style of football which is obviously inherently Erik ten Hag. He's never managed an English football before. He's never necessarily managed an institution which is shaped like Manchester United. I'm being respectful to Ajax and to the other clubs he's been at, but you get my point. Like Manchester United are a media entity which trumps almost any other club in Europe, right? They're an entity which is not only media, but also revenue driven. And players know this. They can exploit that for wages, all these kind of things. They know that overall Manchester United aren't just operating on the idea that football is the end goal for us. They have other goals. And so what they haven't necessarily acknowledged yet is, and what Manchester United almost don't acknowledge as an institution is, if the football is bad on the field, everything goes bad off it. Weirdly, they've managed to almost like rise above that or remain floating just above that in this time. And when they lose, they're still relevant because they've got such a massive global fan base, because they always have the potential to come back, because they always have this potential to rise again like a phoenix from the flames or whatever. But look at the start of the season here. I've highlighted all of their fixtures so far. 1-0 to Manchester United against Wolves. Pretty underwhelming, but a promising start. Tottenham was an absolute, I don't want to say bloodbath, but it was humiliating, the loss. They had a manager on the opposite side, Ange Postecoglou, just come in and was essentially saying, hey, I've got some new philosophies, against a manager who had had some time to lay those philosophies down, but wasn't necessarily backed in the way that Ange was. And that contrast felt very stark for Manchester United and Spurs. They then win just against Nottingham Forest, by the way, who had a man sent off. Arsenal, bad loss. Brighton, bad loss. Bayern, disappointing loss, not necessarily bad, but I felt like Manchester United, in that game, there were moments of hope. There were also moments of, it's still this. 1-0 win away to Burnley, sure. Home win to Crystal Palace, you should be doing that. That's what you're supposed to do. The Crystal Palace loss, the Galatasaray loss, and then the win against Brentford. The losses they've sustained so far this season feel so much more meaningful, despite the fact that if you look at the Premier League table, by the way, they find themselves 8 points off the top, 5 points off the Champions League spots, and even just 4 points behind Aston Villa and Brighton. That's 2 wins, or 1 win and 1 draw, away from being even in competition for those places. If you extricate that out over a season, is extricate the right word? If you kind of expand that out over a season, Manchester United are finishing in roughly the mid-50s in terms of their points total. That is not going to be enough to get you into the Champions League places. And in fact, if you take Liverpool's numbers out, we're looking at roughly 60 to 70 points. Possibly pushing that a little bit further. If you extricate Tottenham's numbers out, we're looking at 80-something points. I'm not saying that everyone's going to remain on the same level. People are going to go up and down, right? Manchester United are already off the pace. And that's partially because, similar to the Andre Villas-Boas story, he has been hamstrung by so much of what is going on at the club right now. Surely he wanted to move on, a couple of these people. He moved on with great success, by the way, Cristiano Ronaldo. He's looking to move on, Harry Maguire. Harry Maguire had the offer from West Ham at one point. Harry Maguire and a number of other players had big offers. But these guys hamstrung him. The Glazers. You get what I'm saying? They hamstrung him. The Glazers. Why? They don't have the control over the club. They have not laid down the long-term contracts. They have not laid down, whilst they do have a lot of promising people in here, and they've got people like, Sabitzer and Amrabat are both on loans, but one of them with an obligation to buy, one of them, who knows. Mason Mount, very long contract. Onana, very long contract. Probably 2 guys that are very sold on Ten Hag. Dalot, could he be sold on? I don't even know. Do you know what I mean? Højlund, probably sold on Ten Hag. Rashford, maybe not sold on Ten Hag. He's a Manchester United guy. Garnacho, probably not sold on Ten Hag. Massive Cristiano Ronaldo fan, but is doing well under Ten Hag. Probably feels that if he was to get rid of Ten Hag, he probably would still do well anyway. You got Casemiro in there, but in that period, so probably a big guy, but not necessarily a guy who's wholly Ten Hag. Jadon Sancho, definitely not Ten Hag. Martinez, probably a Ten Hag guy. Greenwood, definitely not a Ten Hag guy. Probably not anyone at Manchester United guy. Malacia, mid-ground. I'm trying to look at people here who are going to affiliate themselves with Erik Ten Hag. You've got a dressing room of people, no matter how long they're associated with the club, where you can look at a couple of guys who probably do care for Ten Hag, but in the long run, get a fat contract and aren't necessarily in or out of the club based on whether Ten Hag is there or not, right? You've then also got people who he's probably put their noses out of place. There are other people who may have been rising or falling in that time. Brought Johnny Evans in, but is Johnny Evans just a Manchester United guy? Absolutely. What I'm saying is, look at this over time, and you're just going to see more and more and more reasons why Ten Hag is not the central figure at that club. And look at the central figure at all the other big clubs in the Premier League. Spurs, Ange Postecoglou. Arsenal, Arteta. Man City, Pep. Liverpool, Klopp. Villa, Emery. Brighton, De Zerbi. West Ham. Yeah, you could definitely say that David Moyes, ex-Manchester United, is fairly key to that side right now. He's got them at a higher place than Manchester United. Newcastle United, Eddie Howe. Crystal Palace, sure, the Hodgson thing doesn't count, but you almost wanted there to not be Crystal Palace above Manchester United there because they don't have a long-term plan and they're still on level points with Manchester United after minimum summer spend. And the fact is, like, all of these things are pointing to a crisis at Manchester United, not necessarily in the immediate future, but in the fact that, just the fact that these things are being floated in the first place, the fact that it's being briefed in multiple places, the fact that agents are reaching out to people, the fact that there are people who think in this time, because the players can't go out in the field and perform, because there can be a weighing of interviews, this cocktail of issues, this cocktail of problems that are currently being created around Manchester United is conspiring against Erik ten Hag. Someone who probably has, and let's be honest, more control over the club than some other people would be used to for a manager, and he should be given that control. But he doesn't have control of everything. Doesn't have control of the transfers, couldn't get rid of Harry Maguire, couldn't get rid of certain players, and now those well-liked players are able to sit in the corner of the dressing room, or wherever it is, have small conversations with people. Say, oh, are you happy with Ten Hag? Because I'm not. Going around and telling journalists, not everyone's 100% happy. Now, that doesn't mean that everyone hates Erik ten Hag and they don't want him in the club. This is much more nuanced. But think about the old colleagues at work that you don't necessarily like. Think about those people that you think are standing in your way, and then extricate that. Expand that out over millions of pounds that potentially is generational wealth for you, something that you believe is your meal ticket for your entire family. Ronaldo. Did he want to stay at Manchester United? I don't even know at this point, but he saw himself as more key than Ten Hag did. Sancho. I mean, everyone says Sancho's such a nice guy. There's a reason he's not still at Man City. There's a reason other top clubs didn't rival Manchester United for his signature. I'm not saying he's a bad guy. I think there's great qualities to him. But what I'm saying is there is an issue there at the club at the moment which sits as, and I think should be questioned over, what is the relationship? It's not saying that these guys are good guys and bad guys. I think Erik ten Hag is a good guy. I don't think Jadon Sancho is a bad guy. I think there's probably a middle ground here. There is a political tug of war, shall we say, which basically says, hey, like, I want to play for the club, I want to do well for Manchester United. You want to do well for Manchester United, and I don't fit into your plans. What happens there? Who's the good guy? Who's the bad guy there for Manchester United fans? You can't necessarily say that is Erik ten Hag. You can't say it's Jadon Sancho. But you definitely gamble more on Erik ten Hag and say to Jadon Sancho, well, where else therefore are you going? Because if we sell you, you're not going to go somewhere else for the same wages. You'll be used goods or whatever it is. You'll be going somewhere else where you won't necessarily you'll have to redeem yourself rather than be the main man. And let's face it, like, if you have belief in yourself as a football player, like, not this guy, like this guy does, well, what next? Like, I get it. You know, I like Harry Maguire. I'm sure he's a lovely guy. He thinks he's going to be in the England squad. Credit to him. But the point is, with all these issues, with all of these, not everyone pulling in the same direction, again, I'll take you back to this Premier League table. It just doesn't make for good reading. Everyone seems to be pulling in the same direction in any of these top four, and I mean everyone. The players who didn't pull in the same direction at Liverpool, out the door. The players who did that at Man City, out the door. Though, did they replace them properly? Possibly not in some scenarios. People who didn't want to do it at Arsenal, out the door. Same at Tottenham. Same at Villa, same at Brighton, same at West Ham, same at Newcastle. All these teams have elements where you basically go, hey, like, you don't want to be here? Cool, don't be here. And the manager had absolute say on that. Erik ten Hag doesn't have that right now. And whilst he's being portrayed in the media as a bad guy, because it makes for much more clickable stuff than clickbaiting Sancho's name or whatever it is, and these guys probably want to keep all of the players on side rather than the manager, what it is indicative of is a change in a sea change, should we say, at the club, which says, hey, things not going well right now. We need to find someone to blame and we need to move on from this. Let's make that Erik ten Hag. Let's make that whoever else. The point is, when you get down to the brass tacks of it, Ronaldo was well-liked, but not really a relevant player at the club. Sancho, well-liked, but probably surplus to requirements, considering they bought in Antony, and on the opposite wing he seems to prefer other people, though Sancho still playing relatively well. As soon as stuff starts getting leaked, you have to question people's motive and what the outcomes are. And the motive in this instance must be that Manchester United, or some of the players at Manchester United, do not want Erik ten Hag there anymore. Some of these guys sit on fat contracts that they won't get elsewhere. Some of these people probably want to be able to go to a Euros or want to get picked from their team, all these kind of things, and see an incentive to brief to the media, I am not happy. This throws Manchester United into disrepute. And it is wholly on these guys. If they can't balance the club, if they can't manage the club, if they cannot back the manager, that's their fault. The manager is a sitting duck based on the great tactics that he has, based on the fact that he's probably trying to prove that his way works rather than others, and also based on the fact that he couldn't get rid of some other people. If you're a Manchester United fan, you should be pulling for the sale of the club to come through, for investment to come in. Because what it means is you probably clear house of both of the issues you have. Erik ten Hag probably gets another bite of the apple, and you also get rid of the Glazers at the same time. Though the Glazers seem to have been using everyone else for incentives to raise their own stake in the club rather than actually doing something meaningful. Why am I not surprised by that? The fact here is that at Manchester United, at the moment, they are not all pulling in the same direction. And whilst it might feel at the moment like, hey, well, we've got the rest of the season, if you know there is a car crash coming, tell people. You do not just watch. You shout. You make sure that people know. Manchester United currently know, I think, that there is a commercial car crash coming, which impacts everything on the field and impacts everything off it as well. Maybe in January they move on some people. Maybe they do improve. But minor improvement from here is not good because there is major improvement going on up here. And that difference is what is creating, that contrast is what is creating controversy and issues at the club right now. I'd love to know what you guys think. Get in the comments below. Let's chat about it. Results are not good enough. Performances are not good enough. And the fact is, I think that sits somewhere between Ten Hag and the players. But the problem is if the players are now complaining about Ten Hag and vice versa, you need everyone to be pulling in one direction, singing from the same hymn sheet, moving as one. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and I'll chat to you in a while. Much love.